This is Northwest Public Radio's Decomposing, the breakdown of compositions. Today we hear from Stephen Brown, artistic director for the Sydney Classical Orchestra and composer based in Victoria. This work was a commission from Janet Bazette in memory of her brother, and she wished it to contain two elements, a Celtic feel and an air of the Rocky Mountains. Out of this request, Brown wrote his suite Takakkaw Falls, a work that mixes Canadian folk songs, traditional fiddle tunes, and touches of Telemann and Bach into a four-movement suite made up of 5 dances: a jig, a reel, a waltz, a strathspey, and the whole work starts off with an air.
Well, when was it? About 2003, I was approached by Janet Bazette to write a piece in memory of her brother who had died in midlife, and it was quite sad, and they were going to hold the memorial service at Takakkaw Falls. He loved being up on top of the falls and exploring the Canadian Rockies, and he loved East Coast music, Celtic music. And she asked me to write a piece for this service, about 5 or 6 minutes, that would incorporate both of those aspects. The first movement, it has a certain spaciousness and an era that I hope captured the Rockies in it, loss for a loved one, particularly somebody who died so young. The first movement was based on Who Is at My Window Weeping, which was collected in Newfoundland in about 1952 by a guy called Kenneth Peacock. I was very attracted by the melody, and so I took that and decorated it, and then I wrote a couple variations with it, and then interspersed sections of my own to create the movement. I got quite excited about the project, and in the end, I wrote a 5-movement, 17-minute work. And I think only the first movement was played at the memorial service, but it's a suite, sort of like Bach suites or something like that. So, but it only uses the dance. It uses the dance as folk fiddle music rather than the Baroque classical dances. After it was performed, Addario-Berry was one of my students and played the cello. And she said, well, let's see the work. And she's the one who convinced me that it would work very well with cello. And she worked through the adaptation. And then she performed it in one of her concerts. I was so pleased that I wrote the second suite, which is really more of a rock-based suite. And then I thought, well, I've got the 2. I will round it out with the third one, another folk. So you have folk, rock, folk. And in the end, I ended up writing 2 sets of 3 suites each, so ending up with 6. And she's the one who inspired me to do that. The first movement first, and then I thought, well, I've done all this research, why don't I just keep going and turn this into a sort of a folk suite, which I did. each movement had a different aspect. But for the first movement, I wanted to keep in mind the fact that I was writing a piece for a memorial service, and that I wanted it to have a lot of emotion and be meaningful to the people who were experiencing that service. So hopefully it has that in it. And then when I moved on to the rest of them, it was a question of what is the feel of this dance, because they are named after all these fiddle folk dances that still are being played today. I mean, they've got strathspeys, that's one imported from Scotland, and hornpipes, an English thing. And they also have things like maggots and delights and laments and planksties. I wrote 6 of these suites. I ended up writing 6, and the last one contains, I think, a maggot and a planksty, for heaven's sakes. The first and the third movements have this introspective quality about them, and the second, which combines 2 dances, and the fourth are fast and lively. The reel's all mine, and the strathspey is sort of a mishmash of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia folk songs. So I just use bits. I go through and use bits and, put them together how I felt they should fit. Slow waltz is a similar type of thing, and the jig is mine, the last movement, except I mashed in bits of Bach and Telemann in the intersections. Mashed. I don't know if that's the quite word. Is that how composers compose? They mash things in together. It sounds, well, with this piece it works, yeah.
Special thanks to Stephen Brown and cellist Hannah Addario-Berry, whom you heard on this recording. This is Northwest Public Radio's Decomposing.